Hello and welcome to the Changing the Perception of Sales podcast, Series 3. Last year, we spoke to SDRs, BDRs and people earlier on in their sales careers about their journeys, tips and why people should get into the industry. This year, we'll be speaking with sales and business leaders about their journeys, how they've made their success and their insights into sales as an industry, especially what needs to be done to change the perception of sales. I'm Lizzie.
I'm Kyle, and still for far too long, people have just been falling into sales. Through this podcast, and by having conversations with industry leaders, we're looking to continue to change the perception of sales and make it a career of choice. On today's episode, we're joined by Tom Lavery, CEO and founder at Jiminny. Now, Tom started his sales career at just the age of 18, before then progressing into management in his early 20s and even occupying a board-level position at just the age of 25. In today's conversation, we unpack Tom's sales journey to date. We talk about what it takes to create your own business and be a founder within the tech community, and we also talk about the importance of and how to create a coaching-first culture. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to this episode of the Changing the Perception of Sales podcast. Today, we are joined by Tom Lavery, CEO and co-founder at Jiminny. Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Lizzie. Yeah, great to be here. Hey, Carl.
Amazing. And to start off then, please introduce yourself and just tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and what Jiminny do.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem at all. So, yeah, my name's, as you did a nice introduction there, my name's Tom. I'm a CEO and co-founder of a company called Jiminny. We're a conversation intelligence provider. For those of you who don't know what that is, we basically help revenue teams maximize their potential. So we record, transcribe and analyze calls and meetings so they can use that to improve performance. Before that, I was SVP of sales for a tech company for 10 years. I've been in sales nearly 20 years next year, which is a long time now. And it jumps up on you quickly. But yeah, so that's me really. But excited to chat to you guys today a little bit about my experience and yeah, go for it.
Nice. Well, early happy 20th anniversary in sales, and so maybe we'll have a chat next year, and I can give you the proper well done for the or happy anniversary on that one. But great. Well, thanks so much for the introduction, Tom. And yeah, in this series, what we love to do is we always like to go back to the beginning, as you said, nearly 20 years ago now. So I suppose then, if we cast our minds back to that, how and why actually did you get into sales in the first place?
Yeah, it's always an interesting question, right? The classic one, because I don't know how many salespeople I've interviewed over the years in different teams, is like, I fell into it. You know, it was different back then. The sales job was different to how it is today. I love being in front of people. I didn't actually like the concept of thinking about sitting behind a desk all day. But ironically, that's what you do now doing sales, because it's changed so much. Yeah, but back in the old days, you'd be jumping on a train, jumping on a plane, going to see people face to face. So originally, I was very your strength is your weakness. Probably got a bit of ADHD. I don't like sitting still very often. So, for me, it was just how can I do an active job, and that's kind of how it started, really. Yeah, but I didn't go to university, any of that. So I started working when I was 18. So very jumped straight into it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, totally get what you mean. I think similar to what you said, we get a lot of people, particularly on this podcast actually, that do say, yeah, I fell into it. I wasn't 100% sure on that then. Obviously, you mentioned, so you wanted a role that was proactive or active and had a lot of variety then. Was sales the only thing that you were looking at, and did you just end up falling into it? Or did you kind of have your mindset on, sales offers, exactly what I'm looking for?
It's kind of sales within a company, right? I moved to London and I was usual thing, living at my auntie's house, trying to find my way, whatever. I started working in health clubs originally, selling gym memberships. So that's how I started out. I think it was at the back of Paddington Station in London, brand new gym. I was opening around loads of corporate offices. So it's an amazing experience. Spent 3-4 months trying to sell it all before it's set up and things like that. And then just went on from there, really. Worked there for a few months. Sales manager left. I said to the general manager at the time, give me a trial for 3 months. I think I can do the job. And then that was it. I was this sort of 19, 20-year-old sales manager and kind of never looked back from there, really.
Mm. Nice. Oh, definitely. We'll touch on that actually, because that's a pretty early transition then into management, and obviously taking that over on that then. I think you kind of touched on it a little bit before then, but what was your sort of initial perception of the sales industry just before you got into it?
Well, I think I've said this on a podcast before, but my dad worked in car sales for years. He ran showrooms. So I think like by osmosis, I was just around it all the time as a kid. So you just pick up stuff and you learn stuff. Uh, just how to deal with people, certain situations. I think when you first start, you people naturally think it's all about, maybe having the gift of the gab and being able to chat. But as you do it more and more, you realise there's many different skills. It's not just there's a science to it, there's an art to it, and you never really stop growing or learning how to get better at it. And it just keeps evolving. You can master something, but you can keep mastering it, and I think that's the key, really. But yeah, I've the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's a SaaS company or whatever. You're shifting boxes of some shape or form, and it's just how you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's such an interesting one. It comes up quite a lot actually when we're speaking to sales directors or people on this podcast about it. Sales is an art. People a lot of the time that perception is just have the gift of the gab and go with it. But really, there's so much to perfect, and as you said, there's so much to master and keep mastering. Really, when you get through it, on that sense, and obviously then stepping into your first role. So you mentioned selling gym memberships just before this at the new gym opened. Then I know this is probably casting your mind way back though, but can you remember maybe the first sale that you ever made from that?
Oh, not really the first one. I can remember the feeling, right? Like when you play sport and you do things like that. So when you doing sales is like the closest you'll get to scoring a goal, right? That's probably the best analogy I can give you in business, right? Or winning a big deal or doing something like that. So yeah, I think it's that feeling and that buzz that you get from doing a great job and helping someone and then achieving that result. And it only becomes bigger and you think about it more broadly and widely. I think when you first start selling, it's more of a selfish perspective, but as you do it and you do it as a leader and then as a manager and as a business owner, it kind of evolves in terms of how you think about it. But yeah.
No, fair. Do you still get that feeling actually then of like almost like scoring a goal when something like that happens?
Oh, I mean, it's changed so much. I've been doing it such a long time. I think the biggest thing is seeing other people succeed and seeing your team, like seeing people grow and develop and then seeing them be able to do it. I think also sales has evolved so much. It's not one person that just wins a deal these days, It starts with marketing. If you're running a trial, service, support, people are involved, there's no island and just one person gets it done. The whole way it's changed. So it's a real team sport, sales now, in my opinion. But I get a lot more excitement out of seeing other people succeed. But then, when you run a business and you own a company, you win a big customer and everything else that comes with it. So there's definitely two sides to it. When you've got to service it, retain it, make sure they're happy, all of those other things, they're important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said there in terms of it is a team sport. Now, I think there is almost that perception. We talk to a lot of grads here at Prime about their perception of sales, and it is like a lot of the time they think it's very individualistic or it's very solo. But actually, it's great to hear you say there's so many people involved in just one sale or closing a deal or anything that it is very much a team sport. So no, it's good to get that from you really. And touching on that, then obviously management and leadership now is obviously a massive part of your role. And you mentioned though very early on that kind of stemmed from very early on in your career with the in the gym sales role, asking for a 3-month trial and then just being kept on at sort of 19, 20. I mean, how did you find that transition then from going from a salesperson to then quickly transitioning into management pretty off the cuff because the manager left?
Yeah, I mean, in the early days, you just, I think, of probably a leader more than a people manager. So being a manager of people and being a great people manager and a leader are different things, and they're definitely like a learned behaviour. You have to learn. No one teaches you how to do these things. You don't learn I won't get started on the education system and all the things you don't learn at school, but you definitely don't, you get out to work, you do your degree or whatever you do, and then the biggest skill that any CEO or founder or sales leader will need is to be good with people and, have great skills at motivating, leading people. If you don't get taught how to do that, how to have important conversations, how to communicate well, like these things don't get taught at school, but it's actually all that matters in business. Yeah. Because any problem or any challenge you have, always stems from communication, and all it is about how good your people are and how well you look after them and all of that. But it's very these things don't get taught to you as you go, so you kind of do all the book smarts, and then you come in and you're missing all the actual practical knowledge. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, I completely agree. As someone like, so I've just recently stepped into management really. And yeah, you get that almost massive, it's such a turn of the tide really, because yeah, as you said, it's nothing you're really taught in, but you can't like read a book about it in school and then, you know everything. It's that experience really.
But yeah, well, congratulations, Lizzie, being put into management. I think it's that classic thing that you go through where it's like, oh, I've got to be their friend, especially if I used to be their peer. But actually, like, you're not there to be loved and liked and be their mate. You're there to help and support them and hold up a mirror and show them when things are not right. So I think that's when you first become a manager, that's probably the hardest thing. You just, like, human beings generally just want to be liked anyway. So like that classic thing between, oh, I want to be liked and I want to be their friend, versus actually just being a good manager and a good leader and being honest and helping them be better. And that's very hard in your 20s, because your 20s you're just trying stuff out and you're trying to work out who you are. In your 30s you've got to put it into practice and master it. So it's a hard thing to do the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree with you. I think that transition from peer to mentor manager leadership, it's such a jump really for some people then. And from your experience then, what advice could you potentially give then to someone who maybe is very young stepping into a leadership role, and maybe from a peer to a manager now?
Okay. Again, this is only my experience, so my advice is far from being gospel or whatever, right? But if you don't know shit, then you got to work 20-30% harder than everyone else. Because if you don't know it, like even now, like, I haven't been CEO of a company of nearly 100 people before, so I've got to do it. I've got to find stuff out, do it hard. Got to work harder. So for me, that's one thing. What you lack in experience, you've got to make up in effort. And if people just think that they can just not do that, then it doesn't usually end well in my experience. Yeah. So that's one thing. And I think the other thing is, you just got to lead by example when you don't know, right? So there's lots of Simon Sinek stuff that I like, but he did a book called Leaders Eat Last, and I think it's that thing about, there's this myth about, oh, I'm going to manager, I'm going to be strategic, I'm going to be more tactical. Like, bollocks. Like, you're in most companies, even bigger companies where I worked before, you're operational, you get shit done. It's about execution. So you lead by example. I don't ask my team to do anything I wouldn't do myself. Yeah. And I think that is the key. If you do those two things, so don't get your team to do anything you wouldn't do. Get stuck in with them, learn with them, grow with them. That's really important for me. Those two things, and work hard if you don't know how to do it. Yeah.
Nice. Love it. No, I think that's really valuable advice, to be fair. So no, really like that. Amazing. And then actually on that then, so obviously stepping into management really young, and then I suppose the next big jump for you, or the bit of experience, was going to Reward Gateway, and obviously stepping in there as a head of sales. So yeah, I mean, actually, what attracted you to that opportunity? How did that kind of change your career path?
Well, I've been in sales, and I'd enjoyed it, had some sales management roles, and I just knew I wanted to get into tech at the time. It's about the time, so that, probably got younger listeners, but about the time the iPhone came out, and I was like, I just felt the future, was in tech. So, that was just the path I wanted to take. Went for an interview, met Glenn, who was the CEO, asked me to come pitch the product. All I could do was look at the website because there wasn't the information I had today. Did a pitch. He told me later on down the line that, if he'd stuck me in front of a customer that day, he would have been happy. So, that's how we did it. And then we just built the sales team out. I kind of see it as 3 chapters. That we grew the UK business out and did the private equity investment with Inflection. That was like one cycle. Then we grew it out across the UK and Australia, opened up America, had that cycle, and that was over like 5 years. And then we sold it to Great Hill Partners. Once we got established in America, built the American office. I lived in the States for the last kind of part as well and set the office up over there. So yeah, it was like 3 jobs in one, if that makes sense, over a decade. So I kind of see it as like, I was at one company, but it was kind of like 3 chapters and 3 different cycles. But yeah, I learned so much, like running a sales team at 24, being on a board at 25, just invaluable experience really, going through private equity deals and seeing it from a different perspective from that investment. Yeah, I just learned so much. I can't describe. And also as well, I think the biggest thing, I look back and people often now just worry too much about like the end result or what I'm going to get or where it's going to be. So anyone who I work with now, there's probably 4 or 5 people from Reward Gateway who are in this business, who and my co-founder, we work together, my technical co-founder James. The journey's the best bit. It's not the end result. You get shares, you sell, whatever. No one's there, no one's saying anything. It's all gone. It's just happened. It's the past. So it's actually the journey, and you're doing it. Like, we were the challenger. There was big companies like Accor and everything like that, and we were coming in with a different view on it. So, it's the journey, and just enjoying, how you develop along the way, I think is the most important thing when I look back at it.
Absolutely, and that's a massive, obviously huge growth that you were a part of, and as you said, that journey, that obviously so much happened there. Then, I mean, it sounds also like a massive task, really. When you obviously joined there, that was a lot to set out in terms of 3 different chapters, setting up the UK, then globally, then obviously into the US. Then, what were the biggest challenges actually with scaling that much, I guess, over your time there?
Oh, we got as much wrong as we did right. Like, say that all the time. I think the stuff we did right, we did differently. We're like way ahead of our time in some ways. Like, we had sales enablement. We called it like sales support at the time, and doing things like that so the guys could focus on selling, and you do like pitch preparation. We built in something called Fit to Pitch. So before there's all these tools out there, we trained the team to be the best they could be. So yeah, I think we were just quite creative in terms of process. The same with any company. Market has to be right, timing has to be right, product has to be great. But then when you do all that, you still have to have great people, because great products and great companies don't always end up successful. So just a really great group of people. Like, we had CFO Charlie, really great experience. Like, kind of that was his last gig. Helen was Glenn's right-hand person. She's COO. She's been doing HR for years. So it's just a real good balance. Lots of young people with good energy at the time. So when you just mix it all together, it was just like a perfect storm of talent, ambition, and just drive, really. And I think that happens not very often. You get that mix. So yeah.
No, definitely. And then I guess that's kind of from a company perspective. From a personal perspective, then, how did you find that transition from, first growing out the UK and then taking on an even bigger task, and then obviously making the move to New York then? So how was that for you?
Yeah, I loved it. Even now, I always want the next challenge. I want the next thing. I think I described it yesterday. As long as you're growing, I think you're generally happy as a human being. So, just growing all the time and working with great people. If you can just do those 2 things, you'll be all right in life, just generally. But yeah, I just think pushing myself to the next challenge. I think having a certain amount of stress and pressure is good for some people, not for everyone. But for me, it is. And I just think, look, I mean, we set up the UK really well, and then Australia, we messed it up, hired the wrong person, had to reboot again. US, kind of similar thing. Then we won like 30 blue chip clients. So it's just loads of learnings and experiences along the way of things that you get wrong or right. As I said, it's always a balance of just getting enough right. and making sure you can work. I mean, moving to the US in 2013 is, 50% of our customers are still in the US. We have a really good presence there. We'll build a team there again, and it's just it's a different ball game over there in terms of size and the economy, and the culture is different in terms of like how people generally think and how much they push the boundaries. So yeah, it's just, if anyone ever gets a chance, it's just a great experience to do business, work out there, live out there. It's it is very different to Europe from that perspective. It's getting closer now, like it's in certain verticals, like it's changing, but it still has massive differences, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that was something I was quite intrigued about, because we had someone else on the podcast actually who did sales in the US, actually in New York as well, and they said the sales culture, is so different to what it is here. Then, so I guess in your perspective, from going to the US, to New York, actually, how did it kind of differ in your role? Like, how did the culture kind of differ?
Well, there's different things, like when you're talking to customers there, but I think you do see even variables from like what people are like on the East Coast and the West Coast. You're just generalizing, but I think just people tell you as it is. I think in Europe, people are, oh, not sure sometimes, let me go think about it, like, oh, don't want to say no yet, and in America it's a bit more direct and tell you as it is. No, I don't like that, no, don't want this, things like that. But a lot of inspiration for what we do today at Jiminny was born out of trying to grow what was used to be called an inside sales team there. So, like back in 2013, people, if it was under 100K, people weren't interested in seeing you. They wanted to do it over WebEx or go to meeting or whatever. So, like, I could see what was coming. I could see that everyone would be selling through like video. It'd be the dominant way. Got sped up maybe a bit by COVID, but it's just it was already happening over there. Europe, was a little bit behind, but you could see how sales was evolving for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's good to know then. And then I guess final few for me though, obviously, we talked a lot about your journey then up until Jiminny, and we'll touch on Jiminny just in a second then. But what kind of motivates you? Because obviously, as you said, it's kind of a balance of get the rights outweighing the wrongs. And I imagine there's so many challenges really to grow the whole business. And it must have taken a lot of drive, motivation. You said pressure quite a lot of the time. What really motivated you to be so driven to grow that business and make it successful?
Yeah, I mean, to be good in sales, I think, you have to have good emotional intelligence, you have to have good self-awareness, all these things. But even as I get older, I think those things still develop, and you're still learning these things all the time, like I said. And I actually think that the motivation is a little bit of a red herring. Yeah. You can't be motivated every day, Lizzie. You can't get out of bed every day and go, yeah, I'm pumped to go to work every day. I'm pumped to do this new manager. It's not, you're a human being. I think it's discipline. Yeah, it's discipline. Like, I was tired this morning, but I still got up at 5:30 and went to the gym because I've got discipline. Yeah, and it's the same with running a business. You've got discipline. Oh yeah, could go spend half a day digging around and on that side of the business, or no, that's where it needs my help right now. It's just discipline, and it's the same with salespeople and team. It's mindset and discipline, and especially in sales, the best salespeople I ever work with it might not be always the best salesperson, but it's just the belief, it's the tenacity, it's the consistency, it's not giving up, all of those things. So for me, like, motivation, comes and goes with everyone, of course. You have times where you're less motivated or more motivated, but I think it's just about really training yourself to be really disciplined. That's my perspective anyway.
Nice. Great. Good to know. And then on that, then along came Jiminny. So I think
Yeah.
to Carl.
Yes, it did
Yeah.
indeed. Keen to have a bit of a conversation about Jiminny and just, I guess, starting a business in general. Because as you know, with this podcast, it's all about changing the perception of sales, encouraging more people to get into the industry. And for me, sales being a platform for someone or people to be able to start their own company, is a massive, massive selling point as to why it's such a great career to get into. So I guess the first thing with Jiminny then, you kind of touched on it in your experience at Reward Gateway, but where did the idea actually initially come from?
So, kind of when you leave a company after a long time, it's very planned, right? The company's selling or doing another exit, and So I had a long time to kind of think about it, and I knew I wanted to do my own thing. I knew I didn't want to carry on being like a SVP of sales. I wanted to push myself to like run my own company. I think when I looked at, it's just the classic really. You had those challenges doing that pre-job, which leads me into like, very rarely do people just come out of uni and start a business and be that like uber 0.1% of talent that can do that and be amazing at it. I'm sure some people can, but not for me. I think having business experience, one, lets you see the challenges and problems that you probably want to end up fixing or solving, and having real life experience, and still you'll get so much wrong anyway, is kind of really invaluable. But no, just like the lack of visibility. Once we had like Australia, the UK, and the US wanting to train and coach at scale with 100 people in sales and CS, trying to get visibility of performance in board meetings on what's in Salesforce when it's all just down to human input. It was basically rubbish. So yeah, for me it was like, right, how could we automate Salesforce like a self-driving car? How could we capture all this data to be more valuable than what's going in the CRM, whatever they use, HubSpot, Pipedrive, whatever? And then how could you use this data to coach? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what data point you've got, it's only as good as what you do with that data. I think that's where most companies fall down. They have, data, but it's like, right, well, what am I actually actioning to do? You can have every lovely, beautiful dashboard and report that you bloody want. If you don't do anything about what it's telling you, then it doesn't matter,
Yeah, and I completely agree. Relying on CRM data and everything else is not the most reliable source, because salespeople, is fair to say, probably aren't the best at admin, or certainly don't like doing it. And I love that the business was born out of a genuine problem or challenge that you were facing as well.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of people listening to this, Tom, that, I don't know, they've probably been up at night going, oh, that'd be a great idea, or maybe got ambitions of their own one day to start a company. And we're probably not going to unpack all of this on this podcast, but how do you go from having an idea or a vision to actually creating like a tech product and a business that you've got today?
We've got to be prepared to take risks, and you've got to be prepared to sacrifice. I think the biggest reason a lot of people don't start businesses is they're not prepared to make sacrifices, like really on their life. Like all my best mates from school, I just started seeing again quite regularly, like once a quarter. They've all got kids now, whatever. Sometimes I didn't see them for years, like because just I literally work 6 days a week and I have kids, and then I put my time with them. So like the things that people don't like, there's people that probably sacrifice way more. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but you just got to make choices. You can't. There's only so much you can do. So I think being prepared to do that. I think also you've got to have the right balance. Like you can't like starting a business, whatever type of business you want to do, doing it on your own is very hard, especially a tech business. Having the great technical co-founder, having diverse skills across the co-founding team, probably not fighting with another co-founder, knowing what your role is and what your space is, not having two people trying to be the CEO or whatever. So I think, having that right team who's in it with you. You can't have one person who's like, no, right, I'm fully in and I'm going to sacrifice and we're going to do everything together. Like me and James worked and sacrificed at the same level for the first 5 years to get it going and did everything we can. There wasn't one time we would ever look at each other and go, we're not working hard enough for each other, or the other person's not doing something. We were both totally in. And I think that's really important, because if you don't have that backbone and people around you, then it'll be really tough.
Was there any point when you're making these sacrifices, whether it be with friends and family, working 6 days a week, was there any point, whether this be Reward Gateway or Jiminny now, where you thought, God, is this really worth it? Like, what was it that was really keeping you going every single time?
It's a good question. I have this thing probably that's just like, you always have micro fails, I call them. Of course, you're failing all the time. You miss like half the time after we had private equity investment at Raw Gateway. me and Glenn were always setting targets that we bloody missed, like, or too ambitious. But the result was still good. But just going, I will find a way, whether it takes me twice as long or whatever. I'll just find a way. I will not let this fail. So I think that's just again, it goes back to really a mindset thing of just like not wanting to give up and just finding a way to not let yourself down or whatever. But yeah, maybe it may be harder to teach, maybe an illness in a way, or I don't know, something to mentally to kind of deal with. But no, just that blind ignorance of just going, right, I will make this work no matter what. I think
Yeah. It's an interesting point, coming back to motivation. Before, we had, again, someone on a previous episode that was talking about the most successful people. Yeah, they're driven, they're disciplined, they're motivated, but actually the thing that keeps them going is more so the fear of it not working out, or, this has to work or it can't fail. That actually keeps a lot of people going, which was quite interesting. Then you mentioned that then. And coming back to the point with Jiminny, I think the key things to summarize really are: be prepared to sacrifice, be prepared to put the work in, but also make sure there's people around you that kind of maybe make up for the areas that you're maybe lacking in, if you're going to really make it work. So I think that's some really, really good advice there. How have you found it, Tom? I know at Reward Gateway you're at board level, very senior level position, but how have you found the transition from, I guess, working for another company to it actually being your own now? I guess the book kind of stops with you. Like, how have you found that transition?
Oh God, I mean, what I would, even when I was like on the board and exposed to a lot in the company, you'd look around and go, oh, we could do this better, or why isn't that team doing that, or like you just don't understand until you actually sit in the seat and do the job. Like when you're a CEO of a company, you see everything, you understand everything on a level to promote most people. So it's another level. And actually, there's a perception, you think, oh well, you're the CEO of the company, you're top. You're not really. You're sandwiched between, you've got all your people to look after and everything to deliver, and then you've got usually investors, and everything else that you've got to drive the business forward for. So you're just sandwiched in the middle between the two. So the perception that you're actually like, oh, I'm the boss, I'm doing this job, and then no, the reality is very different, but at the same time, for me, I love the variety of it. I love the fact that I'm like talking to you guys and working with different teams in different departments every day. I think, there's so much variety, and as the business goes, my job constantly evolves and changes based on the size. So I think that's something that, inspires me to keep growing it and keep moving forward, as well as the mission and everything we're trying to do with the company and the product.
Cool. Nice one. And just on, I guess, the journey so far, then again, we touched on the journey at Reward Gateway, but with Jiminny then, just for the listeners to understand, where have you kind of got to in the last, I think it's like 6-7 years or so, but where have you got to from point one to now, and what's next for Jiminny as well?
So there's no wrong or right way, different playbooks to do it. So like we bootstrapped for quite a while, sold a beta version for money and pushed the company as much as we could. Took some investment, like some seed investment, then borrowed some debt and kept going, getting the metrics right, getting the product right. And then we took some investment from Kennett Partners last summer. So yeah, it's just been a journey, really. I mean, it's free of, like, I think as well, you talk about that thing, like most businesses are not an overnight success, and you're talking 3, 4, 5 years of grinding it out to get your name out there, and then you still want to kick on from there and everything else. But getting the product right, getting people right, you've got to be prepared that to really grow a business to a substantial size, you're looking at a decade. Yeah, you've got to be like, if people go in with the mindset, oh, I want to grow this business, and in 2 years' time I just want it to blow up and go public or whatever, and like if you're not prepared that it's it's a 5-10 year gig minimum, then you're probably going to get a bit of a surprise. So yeah, but no, I think over the 6 years we've got to a really good place now where we've got really good investors, we've got a great team, product's really great. I think the market's maturing as well because it's a new market, so it's kind of coming out the early adopters phase, and bigger businesses are buying this technology because they can see the value, and we're just excited about. We're only really scratching the surface in terms of what we can do. The intelligence and mining of data from calls and meetings, there's so much more you can do there. How we see the CRM almost like a self-driving car for sales reps, and how we can automate as much as possible. So yeah, just really excited for what we can do over the next few years, to be honest.
Cool. I'm sure if you asked any salesperson if they wanted their CRM to be a self-driving car, the answer would be a unanimous yes for salespeople across the globe anyway. Cool, and just one other thing I wanted to touch on. I know Lizzie's going to come on to coaching in a second, but you're, I guess, quite an interesting one really I want to touch on is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you are in business with your wife at Jiminny. So just interested into what's that dynamic kind of been like over the last few years?
Well, we actually have worked together now for, I'm going to go back, so 2010, 2011, so quite a long time. So we actually met at Raw Gateway. So we actually worked together previously. We met there, we got married, had kids, and then me and James started Jiminny. Shelley came in when it started to get some traction. And she runs one of our teams now. But she's always been like she's a really good coach and leader anyway. So she's always been my coach. That's right, at the end of the day. So yeah, like sometimes being like, I think we just know when to draw the line, when to not talk about stuff. And sometimes we want to, and we're both very passionate and both work really hard. So we just try and get that balance right. But we've done it for so long, it's just normal. It doesn't feel unusual to work together because it feels like we always have, because it's been like nearly 15 years or whatever, something silly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, just something I was keen to touch on. And I guess what kind of makes it easier is that you'd already done it before. If it was just Jiminny for the first time, it might have made it a little bit more challenging. But like you said, it's just the norm. So don't really know any different, I guess, over the last 10, 12 years. But no, cool, good to touch on. Lizzie, I'm going to come back over to you now because I know you're keen to kind of touch on more around, I guess, the mission, what you mentioned, Tom, really, which is all about coaching and high performance.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose, just building on from Jiminny, really, the whole concept and the idea. Obviously, we looked online, and I know you talked somewhere about you looking at an individual and just couldn't see how to get them better, how to kind of coach them. You've done everything that you can do, but what's that kind of final piece of the puzzle, really? And I suppose a lot of the messaging from Jiminny is around high performance and allowing salespeople to almost be the best that they can be and to keep improving then. So I guess from your perspective then, why is coaching so important in order to achieve high performance?
Well, let's take, I'll add to use Carl's words, let's unpack it a bit, take it a step back. So I think personally, with not just Jiminny, but with many other companies with this type of technology, you're changing the mindset and mentality of a modern sales team. So I saw it happening already. Millennials are now dominant. You've now dealing with Gen Zs in your team or whatever. So it was different if you go back 5, 6, 7, 8 years previously. Transparency, visibility of performance, wanting feedback. At the end of the day, look, we capture data, we give you data and insights, really impactful. Where you win or lose deals, you can give feedback, you can coach at scale, all of those things. But it's just a vehicle for having other coaching conversations in the business, having a being open, having a strong mindset, learning from others. So that's really where the passion comes from, and we can keep evolving the product and stuff like that. But it's really, I think, where you talk about your podcast and what you're trying to do, is like, I think if most companies have used this type of technology, they're definitely a different type of salesperson to what a salesperson would have been 10 years ago. because they're just already willing to listen back to their own voice and feel comfortable. If they can do that, then they can take feedback from their peers. If they can take feedback from their peers, they're probably ready to then take feedback on the last piece of the puzzle, which is actually their senior boss or manager. So you usually think it's the other way around. You kind of really want to reverse engineer it. Like, Lizzie, you need to get comfortable with your own voice. If you're comfortable with your own voice, you can probably give yourself feedback. It's probably the starting point. Then you reverse it into like, oh, well, Nick's been here a year more than me. Can Nick tell me a few things? And then I'm ready to sit down with my manager and really kind of go to town on improving the structure and how it works. So yeah, for me, it's bigger than the technology. It's really changing the mentality of how people want to operate in the workplace. Like you know this, and you probably even see it in your team. Is like one of your team will play tennis or golf. They're quite happy to try and improve their swing all the time, or make their serve better. But then they go into job and they're going, well, I know how to sell. Don't need to change anything. It's like always scoring 100 when you play golf and then go, no, I don't need to change my swing. Don't need to do anything. Well, no, because you can't shoot par, so you've got to do something to make it better. But in business, there's this weird block because I know how to do my job. I've been here 2 years. It's like, no, you don't. It's like takes 6 hours. It's like, what is it, 6,000 hours or 10,000 hours, sorry, and 6 years to master something. So if you've got an AE who's been somewhere 2 years one place and 1 year another and doing 4 demos a week, do they master a demo? I don't think so, because they haven't done 10,000 hours of demos. So, I think there's just a mindset and a mentality thing that's good. And I see a lot of leaders out there now, they want to build a team where they're more of a coach than a manager. Yeah, like if you look in football, it's changed. It used to be called a manager, now it's called a head coach. Why? Because your job's to develop the squad and the team that you've got. It's the same in business. Like, where you're a sales leader, you're there to coach and develop those people to be better, make them independent, get them to think for themselves, all of those things. So for me, we're really changing the culture within sales teams, I think. There's many things that do that, generations, time, but I'd like to think that we play our part in that as well, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like that analogy actually of the sports thing. I think me and Carl were talking earlier actually, and it was almost like you wouldn't like a sports team or a manager or a head coach as they now call them. You wouldn't just watch the games that the players play. You'd watch them in training. You'd want to improve them, and the players would obviously coach each other. It wouldn't just be a case of turn up to a game. If they do well, great. If they don't, oh well, try again next week. You work on it in training, and it's almost that mentality of getting comfortable with doing these training sessions and coaching and actually observing that. And we were thinking of that analogy, and why is that not like almost like practiced universally within sales as well, just constantly coaching people?
Yeah, I mean, it's insane still that people go, oh no, I don't like watching myself back, or I don't like it's like, do you think like Harry Kane wouldn't watch back when he missed 2 chances but scores 2? Like, of course he would. But I don't know, there's a stigma around that. It's not, but anything, it's like, if it's like, oh, I'm a music teacher, but I don't listen to them play the trumpet. Like, no. Like, how can you teach them then? It's like, so, yeah, I just think we're uncovering all those things, but it's still people doing it. And, we just had a company the other day, and this is where I love it the most, is where I think they've done a trial or whatever, and it's like, I don't know, they've got in customer facing probably about 50 people, fast growing company, but they weren't sure at first, didn't have the budget for this year, whatever, and the CFO and the CEO have got him like on it, because we have something called insight seats, so the whole business can help make sales better. A lot of the time, what's the whole business trying to do? Drive more revenue, be more successful, grow more each year, help their customers more, do a better job. So, like getting the whole business product marketing involved, I love to see that, because this will evolve, and it is about like the voice of the customer really, and helping the whole business do that. So it starts with capturing sales and customer conversations, but really it's a tool in my eyes, and it will keep evolving. It's a tool for the whole business to use.
Nice. No, like that, absolutely. And it kind of goes back to that theme we were talking about earlier within, it's not just this isn't a solo sport anymore. This isn't individualistic. It's a team game really with sales. And actually on that, then you mentioned earlier about kind of that feeling of scoring a goal, getting that buzz. And, now it's obviously a very massive team thing. Out of interest from your perspective, then what team or sports team maybe out there do you think people or sales teams should aspire to be like?
You can't say
Oh,
Spurs, Tom.
no,
Absolutely
definitely. No, well, like if you, I don't know, it's interesting if you take a step back and you look at, I think it's just, when you take a team, right, you've got to think about, right, it's the mindset of like, I'm a BDR SDR. Am I trying to just get a meeting and like win it now? Or am I trying to build a relationship and sell? Because it's not, and I think there's a short-term mindset. I want everything now. I want everything yesterday. I want to be an SDR for a year. Then I want to be an AE. Well, no, maybe it takes you 3 years of being a really good SDR and to master it to then be able to be that. And I think there's a whole piece in there for me about how much people give time to mastering one role before they go and do another. But like, I think if you take the AE, they're the striker, right? They're just there scoring the goal at the end, so it feels good. But think about all the other roles in the team, that marketing and SDRs and CS play. They're just doing different positions, but that's all about, as a business, how you celebrate the deal together and sharing the success together, and you can build and design comp plans and everything around all that. But to answer your question, I don't know. I wouldn't think the Premier League's a good example because there's so much money. I think I love it when you see teams that are bigger than the sum of their parts. Do you know what I mean? And probably the underdog, where they do amazing things with little. I think a lot of companies have to start that way. So you're not always going to have like there'll always be someone with more funding. There'll always be someone bigger than you. There'll always be someone that that you're looking up at. So I think just running your own race and making sure that you're being smart with what you have is good. I'm trying to think of a team that would be an example of that. Probably like Brighton or Brentford in the Premier League. Like, they're really well run, and it doesn't matter if the coach comes in and out. So Brighton's a great example. Potter goes to Chelsea, manager comes in. So because the chairman's good, the sporting director's good, the policies are good in terms of who they're buying, there's a strategy there. They can slot the manager in and out effectively. I think that's when you've got a well-run club, you've got a well-run business, right? So it operates the same. I think I would think about it like that. Yeah. Rather than just having, we'll take the most funding and throwing all the money at it. There's different ways to do it. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Nice, amazing. And then final one on that piece, I guess, of the coaching, high performance and all of that then. I think you've already touched on it really, but kind of just to summarize then, what can organizations do then to create a coaching culture and really promote that?
Mm-hmm. I start like with what I said earlier about everyone's got to get involved, everyone's got to get behind it, believe in it, do it. You can't just say, we've got this system, just the team use it, So it might start with that, and then it can basically build from there. But you have to have a plan, you have to have a strategy in terms of like whether it's self-coaching, peer-to-peer coaching, team coaching. You can't do everything at once. You need to start with one thing that's going to work. And I'm a big believer that you can't coach in something you haven't trained in. So you need to have a framework of what good looks like. You need to train that into the team so then you can consistently coach and give feedback. So, a lot of these things can weave into our technology but sit outside of it. But I think, there's not one silver bullet. You have to do many different things as a leadership team and a management team to create a culture where there's a safe environment to give feedback and support each other and build it into the process, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Absolutely. Amazing. So coming up towards the end of the episode now then, just want to finish off with a couple more broader questions for you really. So I guess on this one's actually really, really broad, but what is the best advice you've ever received in your career?
Oh, the best advice. Talk less, talk slower. I think, just as like you might, do that. I think. I think that if you're talking from a sales perspective, even, and I think you just got to constantly review. Am I doing things right? For me, it's like, just because you've had some success doing something one way doesn't mean it's going to work forever. And I think it's constantly reassessing with whatever your job is, whatever your role is every day, looking up. I guess the analogy is like holding up a mirror. Old HR manager says it to me, and like, that's probably what good leaders do. Is like, right, am I actually doing this the best way I can? Is my week structured the right way? Can I do this? So I think constantly reevaluating and reassessing what you're doing. Not all the time, but in stints, is probably a healthy thing to do. I think when you get consistent and complacent is when generally things start to go wrong.
Perfect. Nice. And then finally, what needs to be done then to change the perception of sales and make it a career of choice for more people?
Oh, well, I'd go deeper than that and say business, because I think people are bad at business, bad communicators, bad at people. But like human beings, like all having this conversation with each other, and so like I think if you go back to school education, you need to teach life skills, you need to teach people skills, and that will make people better at business generally. So I think there's stuff in the curriculum that needs to change. So I don't think it's necessarily just a sales thing, but I think that will make people more confident and better salespeople if they're learning life skills in school. So I think it starts with what we get taught as kids. That has to change really. Of course, that you could have education, certifications, academies, tools that can help in business, whatever. But it starts way before that when you're younger, right? You're molded through different ways. So yeah, I would say we need to get taught these skills much earlier in life. That would be mine.
Nice, great answer. Well, Tom, really, really thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to the Changing the Perception of Sales podcast. Please subscribe and follow for more. If you like this content, also please check out This Is Prime on all our social media channels, and also Kyle Gallagher and Lizzie Formisano on LinkedIn. See you next time.